is housed in the College of Law, and that's partly because we have law students that help us out, and they get credit to take our clinic. So you might see some law students. Right now, we're at the end of the semester, so we have 12 students that will be starting in August in the fall. So you might see some students with me, perhaps. But it's just to give them some real world experience in land use planning, because not many attorneys in West Virginia are well versed in land use planning. So it's really an opportunity for them to learn about that. And I think some of you have met Jesse. He's the lead land use attorney. He's who runs the land use portion of our clinic. And then Jared Anderson is also another. He's a planner and an attorney. He went back to law school. I'm the only non-attorney in the clinic, so that makes life interesting working with a bunch of attorneys. Yeah, but they're great. And then we also have a conservation side. Nathan Fetty, who is native of West Virginia, and Jason Walls. They work with conservation easements. They work with the West Virginia Land Trust a lot. And then Kat Harvey is our director of the whole clinic, and she's working with wastewater issues, trying to help some communities that have some wastewater issues. So we've been in existence for about 3 years now. We are very busy because we are free. So everybody wants us to help them out.
Okay, how many counties actually have a comprehensive plan?
That is a good question, and we did look that up. Well, we are working on Harrison and Wyoming right now. Mon County just recently got a comp plan. Hardy County has one. So I would say, I can get numbers for you, but I would say more than half probably do have a comprehensive plan. I know Boone County is working on a comprehensive plan right now. So a lot of counties are either they have a comp plan or they're starting the process of updating it. Because a lot of counties have one in the 60s and then they never touch it.
What brought this on? Why is there such a...
That's another good question. So
Well, like I said, I'm here to learn.
Yeah,
today.
no, that's
I
a great
have no
question.
idea what this...
I can give a little background.
Well, and the reason the clinic became established as part of this is in 2004, the legislature updated the West Virginia State Code. And in that, they required communities to adopt comprehensive plans and update them every 10 years. So that deadline passed in 2014. So that's why all of a sudden there seems to be a huge rush of communities updating their plans on counties and such. So and I don't know if you have anything to add.
From the local perspective, what, 2 years ago now? Approximately, Joe was there, Dave and Son were at some of those meetings. We started convening, like the park board was involved, the health department. I think the library was at least one of those meetings.
Well, let's back a little bit further than that,
Okay.
because remember who initiated it? Roger.
We had discussions with Roger Romar. Roger said, we really like to see the plan, and we thought, it was a good idea. So he actually co-invited those people to the table to sit down. Anyway, we had a table full, probably had
30?
I was going to say 20 anyway, between 20 and 30. The park board, the fair board, I can't name them all without looking. I didn't bring that folder with me. So one of the outcomes from that was that we created a little chart of projects. County commission was involved. There it is. Joe's got it. One of the things we wanted to do was just give the county commission some guidance on budgeting in the county and projects and so on. Another goal of that, and it worked as long as we kept meeting, was just sharing information about projects and needs and what we already had, what we didn't have, and what we thought we needed to have. The county commission back then used that document as guidance in its budgeting and seemed to be appreciative of it. So, the outcome was that everybody at the table, I don't think without any people saying no, that we needed to do comprehensive planning. That was a great document that we needed to go to the next level with. And that was called a strategic plan projects, is that what that was called?
Well, I don't know how it is now, but I was county commissioner years and years ago, and that courthouse was full of plants
Yeah.
put on shelves
Yeah.
that we paid for time and time again, and, you know,
Already used.
Yeah,
and never.
that's another thing is that there's.
And I can't understand the county commission really, you know, part of budgeting back at that time.
Oh, yeah.
I promise you, their budgeting, everything is called for.
Yeah.
I don't think you're gonna come up with any new plans back at that time. Now, today's a little bit different situation, but
Which
I don't
is-
know if wrong and didn't want to listen to anybody else anyhow. That's their job. That's what they were elected for.
I'd have to hope you're going.
Well, I think, Ron, that's exactly why this was initiated, because what we were observing was people were walking in front of the commissioner and saying, I need $5,000 for this, I need $10,000 for this, I need $7,000 for this, without any really foresight of what are our priorities. You know, do we have any short-term goals that we want to meet right now? Do we have long-term goals? You know, what kind of plan do we want to see for our community? Where do we want it to be in 5 years? Where do we want it to be in 10 years? And I think they were just reacting to the people that were standing in front of them. We all have great intentions. We all have great projects. As David said, my list grows hourly. I want one. But there has to be a way of that we've got to look at the things that are most important and address those. And then maybe things will continue to come. So we're trying to look at ways that we can build some sustainability opportunities in front of our face right now.
So I assume you're telling me that the county commission is behind this.
Yeah.
The county commission and the town council all voted unanimously to participate in this and signed off on the documents that they desire to do a comprehensive plan.
And do we take those notebooks that are on this shelf? I don't know. Do you take that history and look at it?
Yeah, I think that would be great. I'd love to have any planning document there was, because that's one of the first things we do. We don't want to reinvent the wheel. We want to see what was recommended, and if it was implemented, and if it wasn't, why wasn't it implemented? So that would be really helpful.
The other thing too, Christie, is the county has changed a lot here just in the last few years, let alone, so, I mean, there's, and as Ron said, I mean, the budget back then was the budget, wasn't it? Yeah.
Myself
It didn't require.
and a couple of commissioners I served with, we've kind of judged that our job was a lot easier back then because somebody come in and ask for, Bonnie come in and ask for money, we'd laugh at her and say, hell, we can't even pay for insurance.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah.
And today, that's not that case, and I think it's a lot tougher situation, because I've been in a position, not only county commission, other positions, it's hard to turn people down.
Especially when you know.
Well, you know everybody.
Yeah, and you gotta be good stewards of those dollars, you know.
So,
you need to
yeah,
But
manage.
you can't give everybody the money.
No, no.
So this is-
There's gonna be a day of reckoning.
This
There is-
is about
there is-
seeing what some of our priorities are, but the county commission and town council, like I say, unanimously have supported this effort. They're both interested in seeing this happen.
So, since the planning commission was established, this is your first planning commission meeting,
Correct.
and you have a quorum.
Yes.
So I think, following the agenda, we should go ahead and just, call the meeting to order. And one of the first items is you need to elect officers. So you need to elect a president, and or a chair and vice chair.
One also need a recorder or secretary.
Yes, and we'll talk about the bylaws too. I brought a copy of that. So
Who designed the bylaw?
we did, so that's what I wanted
And
to.
every county are going to
Yeah.
set the bylaw.
You
One
can,
of the reasons we got connected with the clinic, I call it,
yeah,
Well, I think it's a great idea.
is they've got a process already in place, and we don't have to worry about our process.
yeah. And we already created the ordinance, creating the planning commission, worked with her to get that enacted. So we just need to appoint the chair and vice chair. And then we'll talk about the secretary, what we're gonna do with that. Now these bylaws, I think you can review them. I highlighted some things that we might want to discuss. And then also have the county solicitor or prosecuting attorney or whoever reviews documents, because these also will have to be adopted by the county commission as well. So this is just kind of to review them, but we can go over them. But I think first, the planning commission needs to decide who they want to be chair and vice chair. So I'll let you guys figure that out. Or president, vice president, we call it. Everybody calls it, some people call it different. And basically the president resides in all the meetings. And then the vice president, if the president is absent, assumes the duties and functions of the president.
My personal opinion, somebody who's on this committee before should be the president, vice president, because I don't know enough about it yet. I don't want to take an office, to go into the truth about it. You all have been involved in this, or Ron, like I said, I think, or Joe, or
I certainly should.
some of you.
Yeah.
Well, that's fine.
Yeah.
I was gonna vote for him for secretary.
Because I got paper.
I second Ron's motion.
I'll third it.
What was my motion?
Okay, so do you want me to put it in the form of a motion?
Yes.
I move that I move to nominate Herc Connors as our president.
And I'll second that.
And all in favor? Okay. All right.
I'll nominate Mel Sutton to be the vice president.
How about that? This is a real move.
Yeah, I say that too. I don't know about
You know what? I'll take VP over secretary any day.
Okay, and then all in favor?
Aye.
Now, in terms of the secretary, the West Virginia Code, I don't know if you've ever read it, but it's very confusing. Especially chapter 8A, which is land use planning. And they say the planning commission can elect the president and vice president, but they don't say anything about the secretary. And this is where it gets interesting working with a bunch of lawyers, because they take the code and they look to see exactly what it implies, and they look at court cases. And I know Jesse went back and forth with her about this. So there's a couple options that the county planning commission has.
Oh, we already selected that. Yeah,
Okay.
that was in there.
In the ordinance,
Was
what
it-
did you guys
That
decide?
we, in the ordinance, it says that that this board will appoint,
Okay.
I don't know if it used the word secretary or what, but in other words, they'll take the official notes of the
Okay.
meetings and make sure that the county clerk gets a copy
Okay,
of approved minutes.
okay, okay. Yes,
We could record this, couldn't we?
yeah,
Whoever it is could record it and then come down and take some stuff off and record it in the board report and stuff.
okay. Yeah, so that was one of the options Jesse's had, was have a member be responsible for taking minutes and then pass them on to the clerk.
That was in the ordinance that they passed.
Okay. Okay, so you just need to decide who's gonna do that.
Will you do that, Mona? Mona likes to write. Would you help me prove it?
I second it.
And then all in favor?
Aye.
Alright. You know, and I know a few of you, but I don't know all of you. so-
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm
Yeah.
getting to there.
I'm Joe Frost, I'm the city clerk.
I'm Ron Spencer, just a businessman.
Okay,
Ron,
Wrong county commission.
okay.
Zon has an extension agent. Norma Boyer, retired.
Norman's background was with THHR,
Yeah, I did training development mainly.
so, and Ron's been state board ed and former county commissioner, oil and gas, banking.
And you have one other person that couldn't. make it.
Yes, we have a small business owner, and like I say, he owns a pharmacy, and they called yesterday and said that they were coming to do some kind of
Make sure we still have.
pharmaceutical.
Make sure we have all the drugs.
He may show up later, but he was not certain how long it would take.
Okay.
How many years?
And then, in the bylaws too, I wanted to talk about regular meetings. That's on the second page, and we're meeting on the second Wednesday. If you wanted to keep that, if that worked for everybody, here.
What's
I
it?
guess I need to know what the expectations
Yeah.
are of this
Well, we're
committee.
not going to meet every month.
Okay.
Basically, in the beginning, we might meet, like, I'd like to meet again in May, and then in the summer, we might not meet as much, because I need time to start writing things and doing research, and so it would not be every month. In fact, in Wyoming County, I go there quarterly.
Okay.
So it's really up to the board, what you guys want to do. But in the beginning, I do need to meet just to gather information and documents, but then when I start to really get into the plan and developing it, we might not need to meet as much. Now, we will need to talk about public input and kind of look at the county residents involved, and that would include holding some open houses. And those usually we have in the evenings, we ask the planning commission members to attend those.
And at what point then will we be hosting those, once you have your research gathered?
Yeah, and I have a schedule,
Okay.
we can talk about that,
Okay.
probably in the fall.
Okay.
That's what I'm thinking. The summer's tough because it's right.
No,
What could we do this? Could we set you said we probably would need to meet in May.
Yeah,
Since we don't know what months we're gonna need to meet in, can we just, for now, set the May meeting?
yeah, and, I'll ask Jesse how we can tweak that, so we're not saying that you're meeting every month on the second Wednesday. So I'll talk to him about that and see what we can, I'll tweak that a little bit.
Well, it says a regular meeting may be postponed or canceled.
Yeah, so you could maybe just even do that.
Yeah.
So I'll clarify that with him, and, we can change that if need be. And then also, on the next page, just attendance. You can include this, you don't have to, you can change the time frame, but sometimes planning commissions get members that just don't attend. And they really, if they don't have in their bylaws how to remove them, then it becomes an issue because they can stay there until their term expires. So, this is one we've done for other communities over a 6-month period. This is 6 meetings with notice, or 4 without notice, then they can forward that on to the county
So
commission.
what are our terms?
That's what I was looking at.
Yeah, we need to set terms too.
Yeah,
It's
and
under Article 2.
Yeah, I see.
So the first members shall serve respectively for terms of 1 year, 2 years, and 3 years, divided equally or as nearly equally. This might be by the category, put this stuff in here.
So depending on, our process is, it takes about a year. Is that
Yes.
correct,
Yes.
Christie? Okay,
Yeah.
so, for the plan. Beyond that, there won't be a lot of need, other than, I would like to see a group that met once in a while and
Yes,
says,
and
are we doing what we
and
said with the
that's
plan?
exactly-
And include a commissioner and a city representative.
Yeah, and that's exactly what Wyoming County
Okay.
did. They did the strategic plan like you guys worked on.
So they get put on a shelf.
And then they said, you know what, we should need to form a planning commission because we have all these different groups working in the county, nobody's on the same page. So we need to form a planning commission, and that group can spearhead, talk to the county commission, the EDA is involved in that as well. So they did that, and then they're like, we need to develop a comp plan. So they met quarterly, just to
Okay.
make sure they were doing everything that was in their strategic plan, being active, make sure they were on the same page. So after the process is done, I would recommend that you meet,
Okay.
quarterly.
Yeah, I'm a check mark kind of person,
Yes.
choose this, check it off, and this and that, yeah.
And not to draw us off what we're talking about, but we will have some action steps.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, this
Yes.
isn't gonna be bring jobs or.
Yeah, it will be, yeah.
How many's on the committee?
We got everybody here except Danny Ron.
Okay,
So-
this is the committee then?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, then I definitely think Ron needs to have a 3-year term, the longest term.
Yeah, he's
There's no
been
ifs, ands,
elected.
buts about that. Yeah, well, I don't know, he doesn't get far.
And it's through here.
And like I said, Ron and Joe, I think probably 2-year term.
I'll do 2 years.
And I'll do a 1 year.
Oh, you set that up well there, Ron.
He's been around this block.
Yeah,
He's the next politician.
and I know Danny's trying really hard to participate in this, but he does have kids in sports.
Yeah.
And
And
so-
then
so
he did 1 year. And I mean, after 1 year is up, if people would like to go again, and you can always renew and
Yeah.
last that again.
And
Okay.
you've got Norma here, so Norma would be a
Norma.
2-year term?
That'd be fine,
Okay,
fine.
all right, so.
So we got that worked out?
7, so there's 7.
And what did you do?
Dave's not on the committee.
Dave, he's an
Oh.
advisor. Okay.
ZONA.
Let's just face it, the first year is gonna be the most important year.
Yeah.
F1.
If we don't have it under control for 1 year, there's gonna be a lot of people.
The bylaws, no, you know, I might tweak them a little bit based on the secretary, because I want to make sure I get the exact language that was in the ordinance, and put it in here. And then also I might tweak the regular meetings, so I can tweak that and we can discuss. And I think the county commission has to adopt it first before the planning commission.
Okay.
That's strange, so I'll verify that. And her and I email each other back and forth, so.
Christine, what's your last name?
Demuse, D-E.
That's not the ordinance.
M-U-T-H.
That was your agreement. Yeah.
Is it Christie with a C or K?
C, C-H-R-I-S-T-Y.
Okay.
She needs to have a card. That would be easier.
So do we need to, do we need to do anything else with these bylaws today, Christie?
No, I just wanted to, review them.
Thank you.
My maiden name is Burnside, which I hear Doddridge County
Oh,
is
yeah.
full of Burnside. My dad's from Harrison County, he grew up in Wolf Summit, so.
Oh, I think we did this.
Yeah, he wants to come with me one time when I come down here,
Oh,
just,
fun.
because he moved away when he was young. Oh, you did have, okay.
So you're going to tweak these like the regular meetings?
Yeah, I'm gonna put some language in there, and then if you can send me the enacted ordinance. And I'll
Yeah,
take-
Jesse has that.
Oh, does he?
I will send it to you.
He's in
and I
Kansas or something right now.
Got the original signed copies from the city and the
Okay.
county both that
Okay.
I need to get to you.
Okay. And then are we okay with the attendance part? Yeah, okay. All right. Well, moving forward, I wanted to talk about procedural requirements in the planning process. Since the planning commission, is an appointed committee, you do have to follow, procedural requirements that are outlined in the West Virginia Code. So I just wanted to go over them so you guys just kind of have an idea of why we do things we do. So if you go on, and it's very important for planning commissions, and I know the governing bodies deal with this all the time. So if you look on page 2, they're required by law, so obviously we want to make sure we follow them. And they also help to ensure consistency and fairness, promote transparency, and promote community participation. So in the West Virginia Code, the Planning Commission shall adopt procedures for public participation throughout the comprehensive plan process, include public participation throughout the comp plan process, and request input from other affected governing bodies and units of government. So I'm going to talk about, I actually brought draft public input procedures with me, so I'll talk about that in a second. And the code is strange that it requires a public hearing at the end of the process. That's all it requires, but we do way more than that typically. We usually hold an open house in the beginning of the process, an hour and a half. People can come and go as they please, kind of workshop oriented, with booths to get information from people. We've done a community survey. For instance, I was in Lewisburg last week and we had 10 people show up at our open house because it was 70 degrees.
So this is to get their input for the plan
comp
itself?
plan, yes.
Okay.
And then, so after that, since we didn't have good turnout at that open house, we did a SurveyMonkey free online survey. And so far, in less than a week, we've had 100 people take that survey. So an online survey is definitely something
And
we
how
can
did you
do.
distribute that? Facebook?
Yeah, they have a
Social media?
they have a Facebook page, newspaper.
Okay.
They have a very active downtown group. So any groups in the community. And we'll also do stakeholder interviews. So any, like I said, nonprofits, groups that are very active, we'll talk to them, get their ideas of issues and concerns. Something else I'm doing next week for Harrison County, I'm going into the high schools to talk to the youth. Typically, we go into 11th or 12th grade because they usually have some great suggestions and ideas. So we're actually going to, Harrison County has a lot of high schools. So we're going to 4 high schools next week to kind of get their input. Focus groups, if, I know like Harrison County, I'm sure Doddridge County farming is, big. So we've talked about maybe having focus groups with the farming community just to see what their issues and concerns are. So we can talk about that throughout the process, but we want to try to reach out to many people as possible. So we'll go above and beyond what the code requires, basically. So moving on page 3, everything is regulated through the Open Governmental Meetings Act,
Cough drop, I'm sorry, excuse me.
which is abbreviated OGMA. And I'm sure that the in the city are familiar with that. So I'll just briefly go over it to give everybody an idea, but permits attendance meetings, allows government agencies to gauge public preference, allows the public to educate itself about government decision making. And this basically includes city councils, county commissions, and the planning commission. So you have to follow, the procedures outlined in OGMA. Continuing on page 4, what's not covered by OGMA? General discussions among the governing body or committee members in a social, educational, training, informational, ceremony, or similar setting where there is no intent to conduct public business or for the discussion to lead to official actions. So you can talk about everything, but as long as you're not making a decision, then it's fine. And then OGMA is important too when we're done with the comp plan, we're moving forward with the adoption process. There's a whole process we have to follow, and we'll help the county with that process step by step. But we have to use OGMA for counting days for the public hearings and the legal ads, which I know the city and county is probably used to doing that already. For instance, the agenda for all your meetings must include the date, time, and place of the meeting. It must be posted 3 business days in advance, and I know he emailed me a couple weeks ago and asked for the agenda, so he knew that already. So just make sure we do keep that. Because a lot of communities we're working in did not really know about posting agendas and stuff like that, so we just want to make sure that we're doing that. Setting the agendas must give reasonable notice to the public about every issue that will be discussed. So that's why you can see my agenda. I detailed everything out on there. Post it 3 days before the meeting and in the central office and have copies available. Meeting minutes, we talked about that. We need to make sure we have written minutes of all the meetings, and they should be available to the public within a reasonable time. And usually the minutes are approved at the next meeting by the planning commission. The minutes must include the date, time, and place of the meeting, the name of each member of the governing body who is both present and absent. All motions, orders, resolutions, and ordinances, majors, proposed, and results of all votes, including roll call votes by member names. So a lot goes into the meeting minutes. I don't think really executive sessions pertain to the planning commission because it's not. Planning commissions also are formed if there's a subdivision ordinance, but the county doesn't have that and would not be reviewing any subdivision plans. So that might be where something like that would come into play, but I can't see that happening here. And Jerry usually gives this presentation, and he always likes to give a quiz about when to post the agenda. Because, and I run into this, you cannot count the day of the meeting, holidays and weekends.
Right.
So he just put this in, it's kind of hard to see, this is an example with Memorial Day being in play, and when would you post the agenda? And you would have to actually post it the week before because of when the dates fall. So we just want to make sure we follow this process so the comp plan is adopted in the right way, in the legal way, so.
Where does the agenda have to be posted at? The courthouse in
Yeah, I
the
think-
city building?
Yeah, I think that would be sufficient.
Is that,
Yeah.
does that suffice?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They two guys don't go together. I mean,
I just wondered if that was good enough.
Well, we can post it there, and we can post it here. too,
Yeah,
if you
I mean,
want.
you can post it as many places as you want to.
Telephone pole on Main Street.
I know one of my communities, they actually give it to the paper, so, I mean, now they have a daily paper, so that's different, but,
yeah.
yeah.
Newspapers are tough for us because they're weekly, so you
Yeah.
really have to think.
Think far in advance,
Yeah.
yeah. Now, what I just distributed is the public input procedures, and these are required by the code to adopt. And basically, we created these in the beginning when we started working on comp plans. And we just put in here, basically what the code requires. So, the first item is prior to recommending a new comp plan, the planning commission shall give notice and hold a public meeting. The second item is the planning commission will request input from other affected governing bodies and units of government. And that basically is municipalities, so obviously the West Union being involved. You know, telling the Board of Education, other government entities in the area. The third is, once the planning commission has completed a draft, and before submitting the plan to county commission for adoption, the planning commission must give proper notice and hold a public hearing. And this is where we really help our communities and walk them through the process, because you have to follow, you have to do it within 30 days, it has to be a class 1 legal ad, and so we'll worry about that when we get closer to the end, but that's what we'll do. 4 just states that not only will we talk to people in the community, but, you know, people outside of the community that may own businesses in Doddridge County that may not live here, and people that visit here. I know, like, we did Fayetteville's comp plan, and tourism is huge for them, so we actually did a survey during Bridge Day to try to get what visitors would like to see in the community, so if that's something, you know, that's important to the county, we could do that. And then the last provision just says that no provision shall limit the ability to engage in additional public participation. So we basically don't put the survey in here, focus groups, because we don't want to put them in here, and then if something happens and we don't do them, that could come back on us. So we just put basically what the code requires, and we do that, and then usually we always do additional. So, so I don't know if you want to go ahead and adopt these today, or if you want to wait until, if you want to review them. It's up to you guys, but we do need to adopt them in the first couple meetings. And they'll be part of the comp plan, and they'll be actually an appendix in the comprehensive plan.
So this is just the basic necessities
Yeah.
right now, and
Yeah.
then we'll add additional.
The first public input procedures we did, we put everything in there, like surveys, and then you get a bunch of lawyers in the room, and they're like, well, it's wonder if we don't do something that we said we're gonna do, and then, so they're like, just do it very basic, and then you can do whatever you wanna do, but, so.
Well, I move that we adopt this.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor. I notice that some of us are still reading them.
We're talking about the public input
Yes,
procedure?
right.
Yeah, I'll second.
Any further discussion? We want a few more minutes yet.
Oh, section 4, I completely agree with, it's fine. I mean, as long as we got, I don't want a whole bunch of outsiders coming in here and taking up the whole meeting.
And that, I mean, we can take that out if you don't want that in there.
But I don't care for good positive input,
Yeah.
but I can see times where that could be a
Well,
problem.
that's just
too.
number 4, though.
I
Huh?
mean, it's not required, so we don't have to put it in.
Number 4 is what I'm talking about.
That's the one you don't like.
I said, I
And it's
don't like,
like-
I said, I can see how there could be problems down the road, if you get a group from Allen County coming here and taking up the meeting time. But that's fine, that's fine. I'll second that.
Well, let me ask you this, when you've done these open public meetings in the past, so typically involvement has been very very
Well,
small.
it's
You mentioned Harrison
Yeah,
County.
Harrison County.
Salem just went through this not long ago, if you remember.
We had our meeting in Salem for the county, we
Right.
had one in Salem. For some reason, Harrison County, we did not have a good turnout.
They did not turn out.
This doesn't say that you'll have them at a meeting necessarily.
Yeah, it just says you'll
You
try.
gather input from them somehow.
Yeah, and
So they won't necessarily be at a meeting.
I can't really think of open houses where, it's usually maybe business owners that have a business. And it's different too, because this is a county plan, like in Lewisburg, for instance, we had a few people from the county that came, because they own businesses within the city limits. So that's a little different, whereas this is a county plan, so I'm not sure if you're really.
So Salem has a plan of their own?
No, Harrison County, we're working on Harrison County.
They gathered
I don't want
input
to
from
use them for
Salem.
example.
I'm just saying, Ron, they held a public meeting there, and
We call it
I
Harrison
remember
County.
attendance, yes.
Plan.
attendance that
Yeah,
was
Jesse
so poor. I remember seeing it on the news, like, oh boy.
Yeah,
And
Salem needed to be involved in it,
Oh,
because they've been,
absolutely.
yeah, they have.
Salem's out of the loop, yeah.
I'm sure the city being a partner and also a population center.
Yeah.
Yeah, that will.
Let's go ahead and pass this and move on.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor and a second to accept the comprehensive plan public input procedures. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Alright. Yeah, this is kind of the scope and timeline of the project.
What is a reasonable time for that? Anybody, is there any certain set time for that?
Usually the next meeting is when we approve them.
I'm sorry.
So I just kind of briefly wanted to go through what is in a comprehensive plan, and then there's some fact sheets that we prepared at the clinic about what a planning commission is and what a comp plan is that you can take home and read. But there are many required components of a comprehensive plan, so we have to make sure that we include all of them in the plan. So land use, we'll look at existing land use, population density and building intensity, population growth and decline, see if the county's growing or losing population. Look at constraints to development, and then what develop existing and future land use maps. Does the county have, I'll probably have to get in touch with the assessor, because sometimes they have data that's helpful with developing maps. But sometimes they're not willing to give that data out, so I might work with you
Okay.
if I have an issue with that.
I'll talk to David.
Okay. Then we look at housing, looking at projected housing needs and the different types of housing needed. Looking at substandard housing, abandoned dilapidated buildings. It seems like in every community we go to anymore, that is a huge concern. And the clinic is actually working on a legal toolkit, so we can look at some things that the city or the town and the county can do in terms of abandoned buildings. Look at transportation, and that includes pedestrian and bicycling, traffic and parking because of West Union, economic development. Just looking at what types of economic development is needed and if there are sites. Infrastructure, identifying areas for proposed expansions and determining the capacity of existing facilities. Looking at public services, so that's your fire, police, public safety. Looking at areas that you don't want to see growth. You want to see preserved for the future. Looking at community design, how can you promote a sense of community character and identity? Looking at historic preservation. And then as part of that, you'll have an action plan where you'll look at the financial aspect of action items. setting forth the implementation strategies, have short and long-term goals, and then also looking at ways to encourage regional planning, which the county and the town are doing that already by planning together and partnering on this. So just this is the tentative schedule this summer. I'd like to go on a tour of the county and have people that are familiar with the county take me around. We can look at some issues and concerns. We'll develop a vision statement, how the county wants to develop in the next 10, 15 years, and then goals and objectives from the vision statement. We'll look at existing land use, preferred development areas and redevelopment areas, and then we'll identify major issues and concerns. So at our next meeting, that'll be one of the first things we do is we'll do a SWOT exercise, which is strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And then in the fall, that's when I hope we can have some public meetings and talk to the residents and see what their issues and concerns are. And then from that, just because the code requires all these different elements doesn't mean we have to focus the plan on these elements. And I've talked about this before, a lot of comp plans in the past are these huge documents because they have a chapter for each component and they're just unwieldy and nobody ever wants to look at them. And at the clinic, we develop our plans around the key issues in the community. So for instance, one community I'm working in, their key issues were abandoned and dilapidated buildings, transportation, and parks and recreation. So that's what we focused the plan on. We talked about the other components and made sure we included them because they're required, but we really focused the plan on those 3 issues and tried to give them action items that were realistic to, so they could, go about working on those concerns and issues of the public. So that's what we'll start to do after we hear from stakeholders and residents and we do a community survey. And then the hope is begin to present draft chapters next year and then adopt the plan in the summer. Because the adoption process is like a 4-month process just because of the dates you have to have for public hearings and stuff. Now, this is subject to change. The weather is a huge factor in this. I did not travel much in February and March because the weather was horrible. So that could be a factor, but this is kind of how we're.
So the public input starts in the fall.
Yeah, and we can even, summer's just so tough.
Right.
People are on vacation and I know, I don't want to go to a meeting, but it's really nice.
I understand, yes,
So
yeah.
that's why I thought maybe the fall would be a good way. And something to think about too, I had an open house in a community, and the first one was very well attended. We had a ton of people there. The second one, we hardly had anybody, which was kind of disappointing. And then one of the people that did come, she's like, oh, they're all at the elementary school, they're having an open house for elementary school. I'm like, we could have the public meeting there, and we would have a captive audience. So just think about those kind of events where a lot of people come to,
Right.
that maybe we could get some public input.
I mean, I think, when I look at fall 2015, I think the perfect place to showcase some of this would be our county fair. It would be a great way to
Okay, when's that?
engage the community. August 18th,
Okay.
that week.
Okay.
Starts on a Tuesday.
Yeah, that would be, and we'll have students then too, so that's something I can even get them to help me with. Okay. And then the other 2 handouts just kind of talk about what a comp plan is and what the roles and responsibilities are of the planning commission. So you can just take those up. Now, I do give homework. I don't know if you've been warned. But so that's your homework is to read over those and just kind of get familiar with what you're getting yourself into. And then at our next meeting in May, I will give you homework. I wanted to gently ease myself in with my homework, so I don't want to give too much the first time. But at the next meeting, we're going to do the SWOT exercise, and then I'm going to have you guys go out into the community and take some pictures of issues and concerns you have. Because pictures are worth 1,000 words, basically. So, but we can talk about that more in May. So, does anybody have any questions? I didn't want to put too much on the first agenda to overwhelm everybody. So.
So you're telling me all of these components are in place,
Yes.
but we will not necessarily focus on each one of them. We may decide that our two top priorities would be land use, housing, and transportation.
Yes.
And that's where we'd
Yeah.
put the most emphasis in
Yeah.
our development.
Yeah, and at the next meeting, we can talk about the plan layout. So there's 3 plan layouts usually. The old way is and you've probably seen these, every chapter is a component. And, a 10-chapter document is humongous. Yeah. There's 2 other layouts that we've been doing at the clinic. The first is like you have an introductory chapter, and then you have kind of just the background, which we look at demographics and stuff like that. And then the third chapter is a needs assessment. So that's where all the input from the planning commission and the public input goes in. And then the last chapter is an action plan that gives you action steps for those needs. So that's what I like that layout. That's a layout. The third layout that we've been doing is, so if you have those 3 issues you said, that they're each chapter, and that's what you talk about. And then you just weave the other components, because they're all related.
Right.
Transportation is related to land use, and housing is related to land use. So you can just weave them in. So we can talk about that more as we go through, how, and I can give you examples of how you've done it and what kind of layout you like better. So we try to make it a very readable, easy to use document.
Would one of the other homework items be to grab all those notebooks that Ron
Yeah.
to?
Yeah, any documents that you have, planning documents that have been done in the past, projects, just any background information would be,
Yeah, I've got a few PSD
yeah.
plans
There's been water resource
Yeah.
plans, revenues, or you got all those plans?
I got the water stuff.
Any recreation
available, but I
stuff.
don't have anything else. Well, I got,
You need to just check it for the courthouse. Look on some of those shelves.
Yeah.
Doesn't sound like you can find. Now, they might have been destroyed. Somebody might have got smart and thrown them away, but.
Not just saying the county, even the city, anything the city's
Yeah.
city planning.
Would she want to take a look at what the park is working on right now?
Yeah, because Parks and Recreation is a part, a component of the comprehensive plan.
Maybe that trail 2 piece, maybe.
The railroad trail?
Yes. Yeah, definitely.
I don't know.
but the rail trails, getting ready to get some money.
Lots of money. They turn money into money.
Yeah.
And see, they would be a stakeholder, that rural trail group. So, and that's what we'll do the next meeting. We'll identify some key stakeholder groups that you want me to talk to. So, yeah, so anything that you would be helpful, because I have one community that I read about stuff in the paper, they don't tell me. So that's kind of a new thing, nice to know. So anything that's going on in the county is helpful for you to know.
Historic society stuff.
Yeah.
Because we're working on some projects too.
I don't know where they are in their planning process, but they involved.
So the second Wednesday in May is May 13th. Does that sound good to everybody?
1 o'clock.
Yeah.
Here,
Yeah, is that it?
okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. He's checking.
Well, no, just checking. Yeah, Wednesdays and Thursdays work better for Danny's because he's got other pharmacists on staff. Yeah.
All right.
No, item number 7.
Yes, so any public comment?
I'm encouraged to see that you're putting forth the effort to get with the community, people in the community. That's my biggest worry. Heard comments about the 1 o'clock in the afternoon meeting because people can't come who work. Zana had a good idea for the fair. If you had your survey ready, that would be the perfect place to do the survey.
I like
And-
the idea about the schools too.
Yeah.
Your comment.
I also need to know the terms. I'm with the paper, by the way.
Oh,
Okay. For the members,
I think I have those jotted down.
I got it.
I got part of them.
Herc is a 3-year term,
Okay.
Joe is a 2-year term. On Spencer is a 1-year term. On Travis is a 3-year term. Zana is a 2-year term. Norma is a 2-year term. And Danny would be a 1-year term.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, we got the schedule, we know what we're gonna do in May. And Krista, we're glad to have you as a resource, thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem.
And if there's no other questions or comments, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. You're gonna be this way, aren't you? You're gonna talk over top of the president.
The president can adjourn on his own, he doesn't need a motion. I move that we adjourn.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you.
That'd be good reading, see what you did in the past, give me an idea.
That's what kind of led up to this. We were having good discussions. And, you know, we were sitting around and
Oh,
at
yes,
this
a
table.
lot of people do.
You know, Jim Messenger said, well, we're gonna do this, we've done that, we need this, and that was, well, we could help you with that. And then somebody else, yeah, it was great.
Yeah.
Yeah, Joe, I'll just stop in someday, for that change. Like I said, just give me a little bit of background.
Vegas, that's one of the issues.
Because the work you did in the past, that doesn't mean we got to redo it.
You can get on it though, turn off.
But that was mostly entities talking about the projects, and project needs, and what they already had. And
People get off their.
Technically, you don't have to
and it was